Human rights groups have rounded on Israeli lawmakers for passing a law allowing the force feeding of prisoners on hunger strike, despite clear warnings that it flouts international medical standards. The text of the law defends the move, saying it wants to reduce the harm done to prisoners' health, even though, indeed, the UN Human Rights Commission regards force feeding as a form of torture. Furthermore, Israel's parliament's also given the green light to using reasonable force, as it puts it, against hunger strikers. But under the Geneva Convention, it's prohibited to subject detainees to any medical procedure that's not consistent with generally accepted medical norms. Force feeding, of course, is an invasive and extremely painful, uncomfortable procedure. In a nutshell, here's how it works. Pretty self-explanatory. First, the person, you may not have known this bit, though, is strapped in a chair with arm restraints. Then, of course, the tube's inserted through the nose. Really tricky when it gets to that part by the throat. It's pushed directly down into the stomach. Something that detainees are compared to having a razor blade pushed down your throat. Well, after that, of course, the nutrients are pumped in. American rapper and actor Mos Def tried that very same procedure on himself just to show how traumatic it was. If you haven't seen it, you might find this video a bit upsetting.
And then the tube went in, and the first part of it is not that bad, but then you get this burning, and then it just starts to be like really unbearable. It feels like something's going in. If something was going into my brain, and it started to reach to the back of my throat, and I really couldn't take it.
Well, that clip you just saw was made during the widespread hunger strike at America's Guantanamo prison in Cuba back in 2013. There, former detainee Mazen Beg told us how the method can cause severe harm.
This is setting a dangerous precedent. What we already know is that in the United States, you can't force-feed prisoners, but you can in Guantanamo Bay. The medical profession around the world pretty much has condemned this as a source, as a form of torture. It's difficult to know which method is going to be used in Israel. I was part of some hunger strikes in the early days in the Bagram and in Guantanamo, but I wasn't part of the major hunger strikes which happened after I left. And I know several people have been physically damaged, irreparably damaged over a period of time through the force-feeding process. And I'm shocked to hear that Israel would say that this form of torture is now going to be sanctioned by law.
RT got in touch with a group called Physicians for Human Rights in Israel. It says the legislation is shameful and that doctors should not serve as a, quote, fig leaf for torture. We also contacted Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International.
Under human rights law, any force-feeding of prisoners amounts to inhuman treatment, which is prohibited under international human rights laws. If Israel does, in fact, force-feed prisoners who are protesting their conditions, including indefinite detention, it will actually make the protest that much louder. When reports come out that these prisoners have been forcibly fed, it will only serve to highlight their plight.
Since 1967, actually, there are dozens of Palestinian hunger strike took place, and none of the hunger strikers actually died because of the hunger strike. What actually happened is when the Israeli authorities tried to force feed the hunger strikers, actually 5 of them died within the practice. We have a bill against forced feeding animals, and we have now, thanks to the government, another bill that allow forced feeding for hunger striker. And this, the Israeli authorities actually trying to deal with the symptoms instead of dealing with the actual problem.
We also heard from human rights lawyer Dan Kovalik in the United States. He says America's full backing of Israel pretty much allows it to overstep international law.
It is not legal. And in fact, Israel's own medical society has publicly said it is not legal, that it constitutes torture, and that is also in keeping with decisions by the United Nations, the International Committee on the Red Cross, and the World Medical Association as well. Force feeding of prisoners is universally viewed as torture, as cruel and unusual punishment, and it is universally condemned. With Israel's violation of international law, there's always is a lot of hand-wringing at the UN about it, but very little's done because of the Security Council, where the U.S. holds a veto and tends to veto any condemnation of Israel. So probably the best challenge and the best hope the Palestinians have is probably in the hands of good Israelis who oppose this measure.
5 people are dead after Kurdish militants carried out 2 separate attacks in Turkey. The first targeted a police station, killing 2 officers. 2 militants also died there. The second assault was on railway workers in eastern Turkey, killing 1. Violence has increased in the country in the past week, with the government launching aerial strikes against Kurdish militant bases in Iraq.
The host city of the Olympic Winter Games 2022. Beijing.
Yeah, big news for China earlier. Beijing has been chosen as the Winter Olympics host city in 2022. The Chinese capital is the first city to host both Olympic tournaments, having staged the summer event in 2008. Beijing beat Kazakhstan's biggest city, Almaty, for the honour. Pretty pictures to leave you with this hour. The population of an extremely rare breed of white lions increased after 4 cubs were born in a Crimean zoo. Let's take a look. The 3 boys and 1 girl all have snow white fur and blue eyes. Kind of weird. Cute, though. They're just a few days old. They're going to grow. They're all reported to be healthy. I'm getting carried away myself. The mother's feeding the cubs herself, apparently, which is unusual in captivity. The cub's fur, bit of background here, is due to a genetic mutation, the colour of it. However, they're not albinos, apparently, the experts say. They actually have normal coloured skin because they're white lions. Currently less than 200 white lions in the world. I've been told to shut up. OK. Stay with us for the story of a once abandoned skyscraper in Venezuela's capital. It's now become a state within a state. I'm back with more in 33 minutes.